Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an opportunity now for us to connect, to open up, to share, and to deepen our awareness of what really matters to us in our lives. You know, as we go through our daily routine, there's so much chaos, there's so much turmoil and change that's happening in our world, whether that's personally, state-wise, community level, or globally. And today's a time for us to come together and to remember the truth of who we are. And who we are powerful, majestic spiritual beings. And part of the journey of our spirituality is to forget about that, to separate from our source, to separate from the truth of who we are. We begin a journey where we were once one, connected to the divine, and we chose to get to know our individual, unique expression of love that we are. So we chose to separate on a soul level to explore the unique individuality of our expression. And in that separation, we began to forget. We forgot the truth of what really matters. And we journeyed through many different experiences, I believe many different lifetimes. We went through all the different kingdoms, from the mineral to the plant to the animal to the human kingdom. And then we come into the human being. And we have lifetimes here where we explore and seek to understand. And then something happens. A spark is lit. And something takes place where you begin to remember what was once forgotten. And not only remember, the spiritual journey is about awakening and remembering, but then to reunite, to reconnect with our source. And our source has been defined and described from humanity through many different religions and many different expressions. But what's most important is your perception, your personal and private connection with what I term God, Goddess, all that is. Your personal and private connection with your soul and your spirit. And in so doing, you begin to come home to yourself. And that's where we are all searching for, is to be at one with ourself. And from that oneness, to open up, to connect, to reunite and to remember the truth of who you are, and then to bring who you are into the world, your real self, not necessarily who you've become. Because on the journey, we also have this companion, as all of us are aware of, called the ego, right? And that ego is a part of us that's necessary as human beings. And it's there to collect information. But it only has the 5 physical senses to make discernment out of. Can only measure what is physical, can touch, tell, smell, hear, feel. So that's what's real to the ego. So all this spirituality, metaphysics, anything that's outside of that realm is just often discarded. So most of us spend half of our life focusing on the form, the world, the physical. And as soon as I get this, I'm going to be happy. As soon as I transform this or change this, or I lose the weight or gain the weight or spread 3 inches or whatever, the ego always feels it's not enough. And guess what? It's true. Your ego isn't enough to make your life work. It's feeling I'm not enough is very true. And when we've cut off and disconnected from our soul, and we only listen to the voice of our ego, we are very limited and we create struggle, pain, suffering. And yet, every human being has this spiritual resource. And all of you here obviously have awoken and are exploring and achieving more and finding what really matters to you in life. And on a spiritual level, on a true level of our being, what really matters, you know, I ask this with clients, you know, what do you want? What do you want from life? What do you expect? What do you want? And they're like, I want to be happy. I'm like, okay, you got to kind of break that down, because what would make me happy may not necessarily make you happy. We all have our individual expression, but what I've discovered are there are core fundamental desires that we have as human spiritual beings combined. And the very first one is that we all seek to have an abundance of energy and health and well-being, an abundance of energy to get through your day. And that's unique and individual as the people here. You know, from Steph Curry, who won the gold medal at the Olympics yesterday, he needs a lot more energy than I do, or a lot of other people. So to have an abundance of energy, health, and well-being is the first thing that we all really desire. And clarifying our desires helps us to make choices about our daily routines. The second thing that we yearn for as spiritual beings is that we want rewarding friendships and intimate relationships. I put an S on that. No, shouldn't it be intimate relationship? Relationships. Intimacy is not just sex, it's connection. It's a spiritual connection, first of all, and then it's a mental and emotional, and then sometimes, when appropriate, a physical, to express it that way. But most people think of intimacy as just the physical. Again, the ego says, well, if I can't measure it, I can't measure out my emotions or my mind or the spirituality, so it must just be sex. We all know that's not true. But when we bring these together, when we have spiritual, mental, emotional intercourse where we connect and come together, there's a bond that you feel known and you feel safe. And that's what we all seek, is rewarding friendships and intimate relationships. This second thing. The third thing that we seek is fulfilling success. You know, we all create our own reality. Depending on how much you believe that and to the level and depth, you know that if you at least set goals and you go after it and you got an education, you went to college, you created realities for yourself. Some people keep it very limited, but neither way, we all create our own reality. And why would we want to consciously create failure? That's no fun. We want to be successful because it's more fun. And as spiritual beings, that's one of the very first premises, is that we came here to learn to have fun. When I got that years ago, I thought it sounded so trivial, right? To learn to have fun. But think about it for a moment. When you are suffering and struggling, is your heart open? You're helping other people, or are you dragging them and yourself down into a pit? But when you're having fun, your heart's open, your light's shining, joy's flowing out, and you are changing the world by being and having and enjoying your life. So having fun is not just a trivial thing, it's about enjoying your life. And what was fun for you when you were 5 or 6 or 16 or 36 or 40 or 86 is going to change and evolve. And that's important to keep up with what makes you have fun. So rewarding successes, fulfilling successes in your life, and you get to define that, by the way. It's not about, again, the ego wants something to look at, the form. Well, how many zeros are in my bank account? There, then I'm finally successful. That's giving your power away. How do you feel about it? Success is access to resources. It's connection. It's being loved, valued, and appreciated by the work that you share into the world, which is part of this, fulfilling successes and productive work. You want productive work. Now, some of you here might be thinking, no, I just want to win the lottery, so I don't have to work. I just don't want to have to work. But you see, work is an important part of our longevity. Did you know that? It's a major part for men, especially, of their self-esteem. Their self-esteem is tied into work. And often in the past, not so much today as it used to in younger or earlier generations, is that when people would retire, they would live for 1 or 2 years and they would die. They're like, I don't have a purpose for getting up in the morning. I just, watering the garden, mowing the lawn, and making sure I do all the chores for my wife wasn't enough to feel a sense of true fulfillment. So allowing yourself to know that work, it doesn't have to be a 9-to-5 job. It could be volunteer work, but to connect and to share who you are with the world, so important. And that's what we truly want. Our ego may resist it, but that's what we really want, is an opportunity to do that. Another thing we desire is to come home to ourselves, to remember our connection with God, Goddess, all that is. And it's not God, Goddess, and all that is. It's God, Goddess, all that is. And here's the important part. It's easy to let God, Goddess love you in your meditation time, in your prayer time, when you're all alone and nobody's disturbing you and distracting that horrible, ugly, horrible world out there. Just get rid of them. I got to have some time to myself. Now I can finally connect to God, Goddess, all it is. I did that for many years, by the way. And then one day I had an epiphany, a realization. The challenge is for me to let God, Goddess, all that is, love me through all that is, through the other people in my life, through the weather, through the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, through life itself. That's what we came here to do, is to be loved and celebrated, to give love to life and to receive love and to be loved. That's when you come home and you feel a oneness with yourself. The oneness you once experienced when you were connected, when you separated and started to forget who you were, then you started to wake up and to remember. And now how do you reunite? It's not by isolating yourself from this horrible world, but from realizing the beauty of the spiritual beings all around you. Now, does that mean every human being is a beautiful spirit? Yes. But they may be so lost in their ego and so trapped in the darkness of pain that they do some dastardly, ugly, horrible things. But even so, beneath it, one day they'll wake up. One day they'll remember. It may not be in this lifetime, but our challenge is to let ourselves be loved by life, by our coworkers, by our neighbors. They're not in the way of your spirituality. They are your spirituality. A living, breathing relationship with God, Goddess, all that is. Not based upon, well, I'm spiritual because look at all the books on my bookshelf and look at how much incense I've inhaled, for crying out loud, over the years. You've got to be spiritual by now. Again, the ego wants the form rather than the function. And that's one of the things that I'm bringing up, because it's about building community. And so much of what I've discovered in my own, when I first moved to San Francisco 18 years ago, I was lucky. I met 6 friends and almost immediately in the first 6 months I moved here. And they were all couples, 3 couples, and they were all recent new transplants. So they were looking to meet other people. They were open to meet. I was single and here and met them, and they were great friends. We did lots of fun things together and met them at a fundraising event up in Guerneville, a disco down the river. I really volunteered for it. It was really fun. But in the last, let me think now, because of COVID, the time change, about 7 to 8 years, they've slowly all moved away. And I found myself like, wow, I mean, I knew a lot of people, but my core friends had disappeared. So I started I got to start over again, right? And start really connecting. And I, at that time, really wasn't enjoying drinking alcohol and going out to the bars and stuff. So I was like, where do I begin? And so all of us are here to want to build community, to connect with our community. But it's something you don't find. You won't find it. You have to create it and take responsibility for it. Yeah, I want to connect with the community. And again, the ego, tell me where to go. Tell me where to go. Tell me where this is popular. Where's the insight? Where all the people like me hang out? Let me just go find the forum. And that's important. Don't get me wrong, but it's not enough. And the 7 secrets to connect more deeply with others is about changing the way you relate to your community. And that's when you have complete and total dominion over yourself. Now, I'm going to give you those 7 secrets in a minute, but before I dive into it, does anybody have any questions about what I've said so far? Any questions, any concerns, any? No? Okay, good. Get a sip of water real quick. So when you look at your life, you are the core, right? You are the center. And from you, you have your family, you have your friends, you have your neighbors, you have your colleagues, you have your people you don't even know that you see on a regular basis in your community, and you have the world at large. But nothing changes until you do. well, I keep looking for something out there to change me. I keep going to different groups, but if I don't change this fear of rejection, it doesn't really matter where I go. It's going to tag along for the ride. And so these 7 secrets are things that I've discovered trying to build my community. And I've successfully done that. And now I continue to want to encourage others, because in a time and in an age when we have the opportunity to be so connected, people feel so distant and separate and alone. And that's a crisis right now in our world, and it doesn't have to be. The first secret: when you're going somewhere, going out, going to meet somebody, the first secret is to check in with yourself. Am I open or am I closed? Is my heart open or is my heart closed? Am I open to connecting with new people? And the second part is, am I present? Am I willing to pay attention? How many times you go out and people are out and they're on their phones and they're not looking at anybody, they're afraid. And it's like, why are you out? Go home. It's too noisy here. You do better at home. But they're like, they want to be around people, but they're afraid of, obviously, or there's nothing wrong to check your phone, but some people live on it to put up a shield. They're not open to connection. So being open and present is the first thing that you need to check in with yourself. The second, so important, is to be curious about people who are different rather than critical. The ego wants to be critical. It wants to protect itself and find what's wrong so I can protect and defend myself. You know where that leads. And nobody's out to kill you, Maybe 1 or 2 of you there are, but just kidding. For the most part, nobody's out to get you, except in our minds and our ego. So be curious about people. Curiosity keeps your heart open. Be curious about yourself. Why is it that I shut down so quickly around it? Why is it that this happened? Why am I retreating, or why am I being very mean or hostile? Whatever it is, I need to be curious about it, because when I judge it and criticize, I shut down and I separate myself from changing it. Why do you think people judge their emotions? Anger and guilt. Oh, it's bad, it's wrong. So they shove it down so they don't have to feel it. It works. But when you can stop judging it, you can start to connect and you can seek to understand, which is the third secret. From being curious rather than critical, the third one is to be understanding, to be an understanding person. Now, that's not just intellect. Oh, I understand. I get it. I got it. I got it up here. It's in my mind. I got it figured out. Like, okay, the first component, second component, third component. No, it's about the mind and the heart coming together as being understanding. Yeah, intellectually, I get it. I understand. I'm aware. But when I keep my heart open and I'm understanding, it's a different blend. It's compassion, compassionate connection. So that's so important to check in with yourself. Am I being understanding, or am I like the ego? Just want to be understood. I want everybody to get who I am. That's all that matters, is everybody gets who I am. But are you trying to get who they are? Oh, I'll get to that. Once they get who I am, I'll get around to that, right? No, being understanding. And the world is full of people that would rather be understood than be understanding. You don't have to agree. You don't have to agree. To be understanding, and I'll give you an example. Unfortunately, our political world, the Republicans, Democrats, have been so divided, and there's such judgment between each, that if anybody comes into the room and they happen to identify as one or the other, immediately shut down, push them, slap a label, and push them away. No connection, right? That's what judgments do. It separates you from the experience. And it keeps you isolated and lonely. But one thing that all judgments do, whether they're spoken or just in your mind, is they create pain. They hurt. And so it comes back to, who do I want to be? A hurtful person or a healing person? And if I want to be a healing person, I need to let go of my judgments. And there's so much more ramification, as the rippling effect of when you really start. You don't do it overnight. It takes a long time to practice and, pull back and keep your heart open. Sai Baba, one of the ancient, not ancient, but a long time ago when I was a young student, would manifest gold ash, and when asked, this is paraphrased, but when asked, when did he actually have the ability to do that? He said, paraphrase is, when I finally let go of my judgments. Because judgments separate us. That's why God got us all it is, doesn't judge what goes on in the world, doesn't judge it or try to prevent it. It knows that we are all a part of it, and we have our free will choice to decide what to do and create our reality. It's not they're there to save us. They're there for us to create a playground to discover who we are. They don't judge. God, Goddess, all that is doesn't judge. We judge ourselves. We keep ourselves from the connection, but they never do. They're waiting for us to come home, to let yourself be loved. So the fourth secret, the third one being understanding, the second one being curious rather than critical, the first one being open and present. The fourth one, this is the doozy, most difficult, the most determined, is be vulnerable. Be vulnerable, yeah. And I like to say, be consciously uncomfortable. Be consciously uncomfortable. You know what? I'm going to this party on Friday night, and I know how I acted in the past. I've got lots of track record to remember, to review. But I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to be consciously uncomfortable, and I'm going to initiate conversation, or I'm going to go over and compliment somebody and say, oh, I really like your shoes. I'm going to push myself outside my comfort zone, because that's being vulnerable, and that's where the joy is. That's where the joy is found. You always do what you've always done. You'll always get what you've always gotten. You've heard that, right? You always do. But I got to change. And I can change. And I don't have to do it massively, but enough to see the effect that, wow. I can't tell you how many times I'll have friends and I'll talk to them. This is mostly in the past, not so recently. But I'll be like, I'll ask them about another friend of theirs. Well, I haven't heard from them in a long time. They haven't called me. I'm like, okay, are you concerned about them? Have you not reached out to call them? I mean, like, why is this a one-sided street? But it's like, everyone wants to call me. That's the ego. It's all about me. And what are you doing to reach out, to find out, to risk yourself a little bit? If anybody here is really lonely and has lost a lot of local connections, to make a list of 5 or 6 of friends you've lost touch with. Make that list. And rate the ones that you think you'd like most likely would like to connect with, and reach out to them. Check in on them. To say, hey, and track them down if you have to. But hey, you've been on my mind lately. I miss seeing you around, and I wanted to connect with you, see what's going on. Take a chance. What's the worst going to happen? They don't respond. The worst can happen is I do nothing, and I remain lonely. That's the worst thing. So being vulnerable, we admire it so much in other people, don't we? Don't we admire vulnerability when somebody gets up there and just pours out their hearts? It's just like, oh, I admire them. And yet I'm terrified of even coming close to doing that myself, right? It's like something that you really admire. So being vulnerable is the challenge. And you don't have to start out, like I said, and open your heart to any stranger on the street, but you need to practice it with the friends you do have. Being real, it's called, being authentic. And that's so important. I'll give you a story that I shared this in my gay community circles group in different places. But when I was about 25 years old, I was living in Florida, and I used to go out to the bars and have fun and pick up guys and have a great time, all the fun things you do when you're 25 years old and living in Florida. It's only in Florida now. So one Sunday afternoon, I remember I was feeling lonely and horny and bored and restless, and I just thought, and so I went to this. I thought, oh, the Full Moon Saloon in Orlando had a tea dance at 3 p.m. So I thought, I'll go by there and I'll find somebody to connect with. Well, I went there, and by needy, desperate energy, and nobody paid attention to me. I left frustrated and more upset, and went home and called it a night. On the way home, of course, my ego pops in and says, oh, you're too fat, or you didn't wear the right clothes, all the stuff that doesn't matter. But hey, it came up with some kind of justification. 2 weeks later, I go to the beach on Sunday morning, and I go and I connect with nature and the ocean's one of my soul places that really opened my heart and my soul. Had a wonderful afternoon at the beach. And on the way home, I thought, oh, I'll stop by that same bar 2 weeks later, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And my hair was a mess. I was at the beach all day. I wasn't even dressed properly, but I thought, I'll just go. But I was in this place of complete openness and relaxation. And I was feeling good about myself. I felt connected with my source. And I went in there, and it was like people coming over to me, people buying drinks, people talking. I was just like, what happened from 2 weeks ago? I obviously didn't lose weight. But my point being is your energy, your presence, what you bring to the table of life matters. And you have control over that. Can't control the people that are going to be there. Can't control the responses of other people, but you can control who am I going to be? Who am I going to be? The ego is only concerned about what am I going to do, but who am I going to be? Am I going to be open and present? Am I going to be curious? Am I going to be understanding? Am I going to be vulnerable? Being, hear that, not doing, being. And from those states of being, you take action and watch the magic happen. The fifth is to own your value, to own that you matter. Own that. You know, a good friend of mine back in Florida was about the same age. He's maybe a year older than me. A couple of years ago, he was really down and out because he was feeling very unattractive. He was turning 60 and just frustrated and, you know, like nobody wants me, nobody, I'm too old on my body, all that stuff. And I finally talked him into some common sense. I said, David, you need to just back down for a second here, first of all. I said, you're not giving yourself the benefit of the doubt. So when you can change your mindset that nobody wants me and nobody's interested and I'm unattractive, and start realizing, you know, you're a commodity. In our age range, 60-year-olds, no, a lot of our friends died, did not make it through the AIDS bed. We're rare in the collective population. And I said, when you can own that these younger guys that come up to you and you always wonder, what do they want to see, you know, connect with me? It's often because they're like, I want to get to know somebody who's an elder. But when I had him shift that around a little bit and he started realizing, and he did other inner work too, it was amazing. He's now thriving and so happy, but nothing changed until he changed his mind. What is your mind made up of? Your brain? No, it's not your brain at all. It's the receiver of your mind, but your mind is in every cell of your body. It's your consciousness. It's made up of your beliefs and attitudes and your thoughts and your feelings. And out of that, you make choices and decisions. So what are my beliefs about other people? They're untrustworthy. Don't take candy from strangers. Remember, as a little kid, you learn to fear people from a little early on. But do you really need to keep doing that? Can we take and change those beliefs that the world is a friendly place, that God, Goddess is all that is, and all that is within everyone? And depending on where I'm coming from, I will connect to those people who also are awake. Yeah, there are people that are out there that could be mean and hurtful, but I'm not going to attract them into my reality because I create my own reality. So owning your value, whatever age you are, you have wisdom, you have knowledge. It's so easy for people to just cast themselves aside. And it's sad because you are a powerful, majestic spiritual being at the core of your being. And remembering that and having fun, celebrating who you are, taking and bringing your value. See, what happens with groups is people go to a group to get value, to get recognition, to get rather than to give. Commiserating groups get together and talk about what's wrong with the world, and they bitch and complain and they moan and they do all these things. And, oh, but I feel I connect, I belong, I fit in. Yeah, but that's a big price to pay. You're resonating at a level that keeps you in victim. But we can find and say, you know, as I come into a group, what can I give? That's the problem with networking. Networking would have been a good concept if it was about giving, but it was about getting. Where can I go when I can stay in your city when I travel there next time? And who can I meet? And it's all about what can I get? What can I get? Not what can I give? And when you do both, it's not either or. It's not like, oh, I don't get it all, but it's giving and receiving. It's a dance of life. And most of us are good givers or good receivers, but we're not equally both. And it's a challenge to give love and to receive love. Because when you continue to do that, a third energy called being loved emerges. Being loving and being loved. So owning your value is so important, so critical. And then the fifth one that's so important as well, is one that I'm gonna alter it a bit here, I think. When you're going out into public and when you're connecting, seek the goodness and truth and the beauty of others. Seek to find that. You see what you pay attention to. Do you always look for what's wrong with yourself and others? You always look for what's wrong. I'm going to pick people. You'll always find it. You'll always find it. But you pay attention to. but be conscious. I want to pay attention to their uniqueness, their goodness, their curiosity, their sense of humor. Pay attention to them, their goodness, that they are also a spiritual being. Do I remember that? And let me be conscious of that and maybe connect, and it will be much more easily experienced. And then finally, the seventh is about discernment, being discerning. You don't go out there and just collect everybody that you run into and become your best friend. No, you be discerning. Discernment is the opposite of judgment. See, judgment is all women are, all gays are, all blacks are, all whoever, slap a label. If you happen to be that, the ego's shortcut, the shortcut of the ego that cuts you short, keeps you separate and alone. But instead, when you can open up and be discerning, what does that mean? To discern is to think and to feel and to come up with your evaluation, your own opinion, and then to decide. See, a judgment doesn't do that, does it? Oh, you're this, you're gay, therefore, let me push you away. I'm not going to get to know this person. I'm not going to let them change my mind because I've judged them. I'm not going to think and feel and evaluate and discern this person. No, they are this label and I don't want anything to do with them. They're Republican or whatever. That's where you cut yourself short. And it hurts when we judge. That's the reason to stop doing it. Who do I want to be? A hurtful or healing person, as I mentioned earlier. So discernment is to think, to feel, is this a good fit? Can I see hanging out with them in the future being beneficial for both of us? Can I see this as a win-win situation? And if not, that's okay. You're not here to be everyone's friends. And then you continue, this or something better. That means something else will come along. It's not like, one time it's so funny. I was talking to a friend and they went on a date and they were so disappointed because the date went really bad. And I said, well, isn't that the point of dating, is to figure out if you have a connection or not? You come together with a stranger, don't you kind of like, yeah, your expectations, you want it to work out, but when it doesn't, I'd rather know now than 10 years from now when I'm in a marriage with that person, right? So that's the point of dating. It's like, it's a numbers game, as they say. So those are some of the secrets of connecting more deeply with yourself and with others, to be understanding of yourself, to be curious about yourself, to be open to yourself beyond who you've become. We've all become, I asked somebody that once, well, who are you? They're like, well, I'm an alcoholic, codependent, schizophrenic, bipolar. I'm just like, that's not who you are. Those are labels. Those are things you might have experienced, but that's not who you are. But that's what the ego identifies with. I have people to connect with. Form follows function. If I'm functioning closed, critical, judgmental instead of understanding, if I'm not willing to be vulnerable, then the form of my reality, the physical experience is going to reflect that. It's an architectural term, by the way. Form follows function. But nobody pays attention to how I function. It's all about the form, right? Where do I go? What do I do? How do I dress? What do I look like? Maybe, the form. But how am I going to function? Am I going to be open? Am I going to be connected? Have I set an intention when I go to this party on Friday night? Or I'm going to wait and see what happens and act as if I'm powerless? None of us are. So some of the tips before we go there, I don't know how I am on time. Can anybody give me an idea? I don't see a clock here, but got a few more minutes, or are we over?
It's about 40 past, so we have about 10 minutes.
Perfect.
If you want to take any questions?
Yeah, we'll do Q&A, and then I'm going to give you some techniques, some things you can do. So which one do you want to do first? Do you want to do some questions so far? Yeah, let's do questions. Any questions? None of you got any of what I said, right? No, it's funny. When I do teach, I get very few questions for some reason, but anyways. Yes, Clark.
Just to throw this in there. So talk about the vulnerability part more. Like what is vulnerability? It's like all these different definitions.
Yeah. Vulnerability requires us to not only be consciously uncomfortable, but to gather our courage. And it also involves humility. Be vulnerable means that I'm not going to project what's happened in the past, because that's what keeps people from being vulnerable. Oh, well, I got hurt in the past when I went out and talked to somebody, so I'm not going to ever do that again. No, it means having humility. And humility is about not groveling. It's not that kind of humility that's often defined, but humility is a willingness to let each moment be brand new. To let each experience that you have, yeah, that is the past, but this can be different this time. It can be different. I'm different. I've changed. I've grown from 10 years ago when I was afraid and I walked up to somebody, they rejected me. I haven't done it since. Well, I'm not the same person. Let me have humility to be different and to be willing to be uncomfortable and to face my fears. That's what vulnerability is. Person who said, no, I don't want to be afraid. I'm going to protect myself and hide, and I don't want to avoid fear is not being vulnerable with themselves. Does that help a little bit? Yeah. So courage is a part of it. Humility is so important. And then being consciously uncomfortable, knowing that, yeah, this is going to challenge me, but I'm up for the challenge. And start small, and you build up until you become more vulnerable and more open. So great question. Great question. So what can you do? Oh, yes,
Would you
Stefan.
repeat I don't remember if you said 7 or 10 secrets.
7. Yeah.
Could you repeat that?
I'm going to put them up here, so I don't, but I have them all pretty much memorized. Oh, be open and present. Be curious rather than critical. Be understanding, be vulnerable, focus on and own your value. Look for the goodness, truth, and beauty of other people, and then be discerning, discernment. So this is 7, okay? And this, I guess, is being recorded as well, so you can always like rewatch or take notes. Now, how can you put this into practical application? I've learned these little techniques. It's really important. First of all, you got to check in with yourself. If you're feeling down and out and your energy's low, do something to lift your vibration. Put on a favorite song, call up a friend, do something. If you're in a funk and you're not feeling good, don't go out into social situations. Realize it's not going to work. You're not going to enjoy it. You're going to come back usually more miserable. Don't put the pressure of having the party or the event or other people to lift your vibration. You do it yourself. Now, and if you truly can't do that, which you can that night, then don't go. But if you can put on some favorite music, call a certain friend, listen to a funny TV show, something to get your vibration, your energy up so you're feeling more open and connected. Humor is a great way to open the heart, among other things. And so check in with yourself is the first technique. The second step the second technique is to assume that everybody's already your friend. Then you never have to break the ice. I do this all the time. I did this at a luncheon this week. The luncheon on Monday, or the Monday? Oh, what day was it? Yeah, Wednesday. And I thought I did the same thing. I'd go in there, I'd see different people. Some of them look a little familiar from the community, but I didn't know them. But I would just say, hey, how's it going? How are you? They're like, oh, hi, how are you? Like they knew me. And then they're like, do I know you? I said, no, but I'd like to get to know you. So be open, assume everybody's your friend, because God, Goddess, all that is your friend. And it's about the challenge of letting yourself be loved by the divine. Not once I get to heaven, but now, to create heaven on earth. So assume everybody's already your friend. When you go out, that means I'm going to be open, right? I'm not going to be hiding. I'm going to be curious about, hey, what's going on with you? With your friends, aren't you curious? What have they been up to this week? You're going to be understanding. You're going to be vulnerable. You're going to see their goodness, their truth, be owning your value. I have something to give. And be discerning. So that second technique is assume everybody's already your friend. And have fun with that. If you're looking for groups, how do you find people that are going to resonate with you? Well, the first thing is find a common interest. What is common interest? Coming here on Sundays is a common interest. We all have men and women that are into their spirituality. And they're wanting to learn and to grow and to become more and to connect with community. So you have common interests. But what do you enjoy doing? Make a list of things you enjoy doing, and perhaps something you started years ago and you put on the back burner and you never got back to it. Pick it up again, see if you enjoy it, and find a group. We live in San Francisco. We live with so many opportunities to connect. You're not in the middle of Idaho on a farm. You have so much more here to access. It's not just online. So yeah, look for common interest groups. I play tennis. I belong to the Gay Lesbian Tennis League, and I love playing tennis. It's a great sport, and I've met some really cool friends through that. So do things and reach out to your community. That's another way to level the playing field, because what allows for connection is a shared experience. When we share an experience together, and that's what makes the magic of relationships. I've traveled a lot in my life. I've been in 2 long-term relationships, but I've also traveled as a single man and I've done both. And oftentimes when I'm by myself and I'll see a beautiful castle or something in Europe and I'm there by myself, I'm like, God, I want to wish I could share this with somebody. The photos don't quite do it, you know? Photos don't quite capture the magic of the moment, right? So that's my point. Shared experiences are so important to let yourself think about what can I do? And guess what? If there's some common interest that you have and there's not a group, start it. Start it yourself. Take the initiative. You have 1 or 2 friends that like to do, start a book club, start a film club, start something, a game night with each other. Be proactive. Be proactive. It's not about the games. It's not about the film. It's not about the books. It's about the connection. And think about this too. One thing that really kind of came to me recently is, the form of sex is about connection. And it's the strongest drive for humanity. Well, it's not just about procreation. It's about connection. It's about knowing that you belong and you connect and you're part of something more. And so let yourself explore and find ways to connect and share yourself, share your talents, the things you enjoy doing with other people who also enjoy doing it, whether it's sports or whether it's whatever. All right. So those are just a couple of things you can do but more importantly, is shift your being. Who am I going to be at this party? Who am I going to be at work tomorrow in that meeting? Am I going to be empowered or powerless? Am I going to have humility that it can be different this time? Or am I going to say, oh, I know exactly what happens at that meeting and I'm not going to go there because I know it all, the ego, the ego, the ego. But it doesn't allow change. It doesn't allow change. So with that, I'm going to get ready to wrap up, I guess, in a few minutes. Any other questions that you might have about what I've said so far? Does it make sense, folks? Yeah, great.
I just had a question. I
Yes,
just want to
Jeff.
appreciate your, in most Buddhist contexts, they don't talk about soul, right? There's no self. And I think it's not so literal, but to identify with soul first, the cliche, I'm not a human, trying to have a spiritual experience, I'm a soul.
I'm spiritual being, yeah, exactly.
And to shift the identity to the soul level.
Yeah.
There are people who will look at you, when you're in your feeling that as a soul, and you talk to other people's souls, as souls, not, that's a wholly different experience.
Thank you for bringing that up, Jeff. And that's a big part of my work is solutions. And let me explain why real quick. A few minutes. How are we in time?
It's 52 past, so we have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay. I believe all that is oneness, the nirvana, it's the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, but it's just the one, right? Well, wanting to know itself, it divided into polarity, into duality, into this world of consciousness. And that one becomes 2 as goddess and God. And from the energy of the goddess steps down the soul. And from the energy of God, the light of spirit fills the soul. And from how do we connect with our soul and our spirit? Our soul is feminine by nature. It's feminine. And in a world of chauvinism it elevates the masculine and denigrates and devalues the feminine, the soul's been lost. Yet it holds the answer, the solutions to our problems in so many ways. Because when you can bring the feminine energy, not maleness, female, I'm not talking about gender here, I'm talking about imagination is feminine. Imagination and willpower is masculine. They work together. Creativity is feminine, productivity is masculine. Thoughts are masculine, feelings are feminine. Desire is feminine. Taking action upon those desires is masculine. And so desire, imagination, creativity, a lot of gay men have a lot of those qualities. I wonder why. Maybe they're in touch with their feminine energy. Maybe they're here to help heal the soul on our planet, to know that we can have both as consciousness, not in just the form, the ego. Well, I'm a male body, therefore only masculine. No, it's equal amounts. And that's when we bring those together, we create wholeness, where the wholeness is a reflection of the oneness above, where I am at peace and I'm complete within myself. That is empowerment. And that's what Solutions, my work, my philosophy is all about. I'm not a religion by any means. I'm not here to give you rules and regulations. I'm here to remind you who you are and to stimulate that memory a little bit through my teachings. So thank you all. It's been a joy. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Jeff, everyone here.
I just have one quick announcement too. In 2 weeks, I'm gonna be starting up my gay community circles group. I do it quarterly every season, spring, summer, winter, fall, and it's a 6-week program. And it's 12 men, it's a gay men or bisexual men's discussion group. And we practice these principles of being open and present. And so it's like, yeah, you get it in your head, I understand it, but then to go out in the real world and try to practice it, you often can forget. So Gay Community Circles is starting up in 2 weeks. This is some information, this little flyer. If you're interested, you can grab one, I'll have them out there. And then also at the end of the month, Labor Day weekend, I'll be speaking at the California Men's Gathering up in Santa Rosa. They're doing their weekend camp on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I'll be speaking about at Rainbow's End, about thriving in retirement. And that's a topic that I think is important. And also I'll be talking a little bit about what I did today, so about connecting more deeply with others. So those are some upcoming local events that I'll be participating in if you're interested. I look forward to connecting with you. Thank you.